Hi, my name is Selma Al-Shihabi. I'm an Ottawa resident who's been looking at the housing crisis for the past 3 years. I'm here to bring awareness about a tax that's being voted on March 23rd by City Council. It's called Vacant Unit Tax. The name sounds good. The aim is to bring in vacant units back to the market for people use. It sounds very good politically. However, there has been no investigation of its impacts on the housing market dynamics, affordability, housing supply, as in new construction. And when staff brought in the report, the supply that's coming from existing housing units in Ottawa is going to be very minimal, between 250 units to 1,000 units maximum in 6 years. So I don't believe it's bringing much supply, but the impacts of it on the market hasn't been very well investigated by staff at all, actually, and this is why I'm here.
Housing is scarce and expensive. Renters face high rents and housing insecurity. First-time homebuyers are desperate to get into the market before prices skyrocket even further. Long-time homeowners wonder where their kids are going to rest their head at night. The Canadian property bubble refers to a significant rise in Canadian real estate prices from 2002 to present, which some observers have called a real estate bubble. From 2003 to 2018, Canada saw an increase in home and property prices of up to 337% in some cities. By 2018, homeowning costs were above 1990 levels when Canada saw its last housing bubble burst. Canada is ranked the second largest housing bubble across all of the developed nations.
Welcome to this edition of People's Opinions on Popular Topics.
It's not targeting purpose-built rentals. And when the city came with the report back in June, they said we have, from this category, there will only be between 760 units to 3,000 units that could be targeted by the tax. When they were surveying the residents of Ottawa, they said we have more than 20,000 units that are vacant in Ottawa. So the majority of the vacant units are not even targeted by this tax. And based on the staff report, they are anticipating only a third of targeted units to be back in the market in 6 years. So if we're talking about supply, that will only be between 250 units to 1,000 units increase in supply in 6 years. This is not even 2 months worth of housing supply. On the other hand, every homeowner will have to report about this, whether they have a second unit or not. They have to report about their primary residence. And so if they don't report by a certain deadline, they're going to be subjected to a late reporting fee of $250. And if they still don't notice it or they ignore it, their unit is going to be deemed vacant, and the city will subject their unit to a 1% tax, this vacant unit tax. So even if you don't have a second unit, which you think as a homeowner, I don't have to worry about this tax, it will impact you. And then for tenants, because we're targeting the small landlords, basically this is only targeting small landlords, and it's not targeting big landlords, people who know how to run their business as renters. It's not targeting investors. So the small landlords who are just trying to navigate the market and provide the rental supply that is missing from the big landlords, they're going to be the ones targeted with this. The city's not giving them exemptions if they are stuck at landlord-tenant board proceedings, for example. So my fear is it's actually going to get a lot of the small fish, if you want to call them, out of the market, and you're going to have the bigger ones untouched, and as a result you could have a monopoly effect happening in the market, and which will negatively impact tenants. Is a positive thing.
In Vancouver, they tried very similar legislation, and tell me about that.
So in Vancouver, they did the empty home tax. That's the same equivalent for our vacant unit tax, and that was in 2016 when they implemented it. So what happened was, yes, they got that supply back. 1/3 of their targeted supply came back in 6 years. However, the positive outcome, which I guess city staff are looking into, is we're going to have more purpose-built rentals, because developers know we can build more purpose-built rentals and not be targeted by this tax. Instead of building semis or singles or row houses or condos, which are targeted by this tax, they shifted to building more purpose-built rentals, which is the positive thing out of this. However, when you look into the vacancy rate of the newly constructed purpose-built rentals, in 2021, CMHC reported that there was 9.1% vacancy rate in these newly constructed units, which is a very high vacancy rate. It's awesome. However, the rent rates for these was still higher than the average market pool if you consider all supply that's in the market. So which means, yes, there is higher supply, but the rents are not going down, which usually in a healthy market, you have more supply, more vacancy rate, which means it will drop the prices down. That's not happening in Vancouver, not yet. So people in Vancouver are still stuck in there where they live, whether they're homeowners or whether they're tenants, because rent rates are higher than what they have. And this is not fixing the housing crisis. This is not addressing it. And this is why they're bringing this tax. In Vancouver, they implemented the tax in 2016. And there was a net increase, I should say, of 400 households in homelessness between 2016 and 2019. So clearly it didn't help lower the number of people going into homelessness. The average market rent rates have only skyrocketed, or increased, I should say, not skyrocketed. They have only increased. So in the total rental pool, only 0.2% of the market is affordable to people with less than $25,000 a year annual income. Only 23.9% of the total rental market is affordable to people with $47,000 annual income. And so it's not affordable for a lot of people. And for homeownership, again, we said prices have gone up, so people with 6 digits, 2 people working with 6 digits, they can no longer afford buying in Vancouver. So we really need to treat this very carefully. To maintain, we already have 8,000 people homeless in Ottawa. How much are we willing to increase that or decrease it? Our aim is to decrease it by 25% in the next 10 years, according to the Housing and Homelessness Plan. But this is not happening.
Totally scrapped, or is there room to adjust it?
I have talked to city staff about having the purpose-built rentals targeted with this tax as well. They know it could impact supply, and they want the supply. They want to push for more supply of purpose-built rentals, right? So if you put this tax on them, they may not bring that supply. And so it's, in their opinion, is not good, right? They're not going to be pushing for the province, because right now it's outside the jurisdiction of the city to impose this tax on purpose-built rentals, and they're not going to be pursuing the province to impose it on them because they want that extra supply. So if you're not targeting all rentals, this tax, in my opinion, should be scrapped, because you're only targeting the small landlords and you're targeting every single resident. Because what happens is, if you don't exempt yourself from this tax, like I said earlier, you're going to be subjected to it or to fines related to it. So this is not going to help it. We should be looking at other cities, like Edmonton, for example, like 7.3, I guess, % vacancy rate. Their rent rates for empty units is cheaper than people who are living in. So if I was a tenant in a building, if I want to move, the rent rates are cheaper. So what is Edmonton doing, for example? This is something we want in Ottawa. We don't want people to be stuck in place because they can no longer afford the market. We want them to be able to move and find something that's suitable for their family structure as it changes, right? In Edmonton, they have house prices that are still affordable. So we can look at these cities. We don't have to just copy a city because they brought in a tax to bring in more of the existing supply. We should be looking at cities that are bringing measures that will actually increase affordability, whatever it is.
In your opinion, or the middle class in Canada has been slowly drifting into poverty for years now. It seems like this bill is going to help that.
It will definitely get more people into the poor side, not the higher. The ones who know how to navigate this are investors. If this tax is proposed, goes through, and what happened in Vancouver, like I said, supply for those tax targeted units went down. So in 2018, 2019, we didn't have the pandemic, but then we got the pandemic and everybody wanted a tax targeted unit. Everybody wanted to live in a semi or a single or anything that will get them further away from people and get them still enjoy some sort of a life away from like apartment buildings and condos, right? So the demand surged up. As there has always been a supply shortage, this only made it worse. This tax only made supply worse. Demand was increased. In Vancouver, two people with six figures can no longer afford living in Vancouver. They can no longer live there. In addition, the home value has gone up. And when that happens, City Hall comes after you with property taxes, right? And they say, give us more money because now all of a sudden you're a millionaire when you're still having the same income, or maybe you're not getting the same income because you're retired. But your value of the house is higher than what it used to be 2, 3, 4 years ago. And therefore you're paying more taxes to the city. And nobody's going to be saying this tax has done anything to it, because they're bringing all sort of policies that are impacting housing affordability. So we just approved an official plan that, in my opinion, is short 100,000 units. So if you're already planning with shortage, prices are not going to go down. And when you bring in different policies at the same time frame, it's going to be very hard to entangle which one is the one that's causing trouble and which one is actually doing good. And that's what happened in Vancouver. When they came to assess this tax, they said it's too hard to assess the impact of this tax because they brought in this tax the same time they brought in their short-term rental policies, which we also did. Last year we brought that into Ottawa. And so at least we should give it some time to decide whether or not to proceed with this.
Thank you for watching People's Opinions on Popular Topics.